Well, where to start? I think we should talk AFL and look at reviewing last week's games. And of course, what's coming up this week, especially with all the disruptions caused by COVID. But should we start at the very top, Alex, because something has just developed? I think you need to tell us what's happened.
Yeah, something quite big has developed. Collingwood coach Nathan Buckley has stepped down from the role. Monday in the Queen's birthday clash will be his last game that he's coaching for the club, and Robert Harvey will take over as the interim coach for the rest of the season. It's big news. I think if we're being honest, I think a lot of people were expecting it to happen at year's end. I don't think anyone was expecting it to happen this soon. Apparently, Buckley and CEO Mark Anderson have been chatting for the last couple of months just on the direction of the club for next year and beyond. And it come to the conclusion that now was the time to get a new voice in, just start looking towards the future. So he's had 10 years at the club. He's had a very good 10 years at the club, Buckley. He's led them to a grand final, numerous finals, has built them from the bottom, nearly to the top. If it wasn't for a Dom Sheed kick, they're winning a grand final in 2018. So you just think about how different it could have been had they won that grand final. So it's big news. And, he's had a great career. He's one of the more genuine guys in the AFL and deserves all the credit.
Well, there's no doubt about what you've said, but it just goes to show you the civil war has started at Collingwood. The powers that be on all sides have created this fall now. I'm sure that being on the inside, he's had a sense of what's coming. And he's such a Collingwood man, and he's been so loyal. As you say, he's been there for a lifetime for some people. What he wants to do is give the club every chance to get through it as quickly as possible. So a fresh voice. It will be someone who's been there for quite some time. But does this mean now that the board or the EGM will be foisted on everyone a lot sooner than they imagined? Because as you were saying, everyone was expecting, Bucks to go, if that was going to be the case, but at the end of the season. So does this mean that the EGM has to be pushed forward?
Look, I don't think they'll push it forward too soon. I think that, you see the recent track record of interim coaches, as we see Robert Harvey's coming in now. With Robert Harvey coming in, we've seen the recent track record with interim coaches coming in and not having the best of times, aka David Teague from Carlton and obviously Rhys Shaw from North Melbourne. They haven't had the greatest times. Obviously, Rhys Shaw isn't coaching anymore due to, the mental health of the rigors of AFL coaching, and then obviously David Teague with what's happening at Carlton at the moment. I think Collingwood will not want to push the gun too quickly. I think they'll want to assess their options come season's end and take it from there. I don't think this will be pushed forward anytime soon.
All right, Alex Caiafa is our AFL man on the Informer, and he's just told us that the amazing news, the latest development from Collingwood is their coach, longtime coach Nathan Buckley, will not step down at the end of the year. He's stepping down right now. His last game will be the Queen's birthday weekend. Is that right?
Yes, it will at the SCG on Monday afternoon.
Well, and again, will that game be played in front of fans, and just how many fans will be allowed in? Questions that still need to be answered. All right, let's touch on the other question mark. We've seen that Carlton has come under increasing scrutiny. A lot of people screaming for big changes. Mark McClure was certainly one of them a number of weeks ago. Well, it looks like something is happening. I think the incoming president, Luke Sayers? Now, Luke says that they're going to have an external review, and already we've seen somebody leave the coaching fraternity.
We have. So there was obviously Carlton, been in a bit of trouble at the moment, especially given their record and what's been happening on field, so on and so forth. And an external review by Luke Sayers has been set up, and they've already had a casualty with assistant coach John Barker leaving effective immediately, which is a shame. He's been at the club since 2011 as well, has been there through some of the toughest times the club's ever had to endure. He took over the coaching role when, as an interim coach, when Mick Malthouse got the sack, and he actually wanted to coach the team after that season. And even when they hired Bolton, he still stuck around with the club and stayed as an assistant coach. So I think that speaks volumes of the sort of guy that John Barker is. He'd do anything for a football club. But unfortunately, I think it's time in this external review. I'm pretty sure we'll have a few more casualties than just Barker.
All right, let's talk football. Last week, interesting changes. We saw two teams really wanting to go at one another. We're talking about the Brisbane Lions, who've been in red-hot form. They ran into the team of the season so far.
Well, I mean, these two teams, Brisbane and Melbourne, are arguably the two hottest teams in the league coming into that game. And I think that was one of the best games of the season so far. It was just highly competitive. It was just quick up and down. There was just so much pressure. You could feel the importance for both teams, just how big of a game it was. And Brisbane, for a fair chunk of the game, looked like they were really going to actually take the game. But Melbourne, as they've shown, all season so far, in a really mature performance, they cracked down. Their defence really picked it up, and they moved forward, and they kicked a few quick goals. And before you knew it, they were up by 20-odd points, and that was the game. It was a huge win for Melbourne. They're 11-1 now. They're looking very primed to not one, just finish on top of the ladder, but two, they're looking like the premiership favourites at the moment. And as we said last week, they are the real deal this year, and I think that win has just proven it even more.
The Swans and St Kilda, what was that all about?
This one was actually a really interesting game. I mean, every time you thought Sydney was going to kick away, St Kilda just found a way to get back into the game. And ultimately, if you're looking at it, St Kilda probably should have won the game. I mean, I feel for Jack Higgins. He's copped a bit of flack this week for his 1-goal-5. But it's not just him. There was a few other instances where others could have kicked goals as well. And it was just that sort of game where Sydney took their opportunities. St Kilda, unfortunately, didn't take their opportunities. And the team that did take their opportunities won the game.
Poor kicking is poor footy. That's what Alex Caiafa has been telling me for the last year on the Informer, and nothing's changed. Would that have been the case also for the Crows and Collingwood?
Oh, that would be the case, definitely for Adelaide. Collingwood got off to a hot start. Jamie Elliott, first game back in 10 weeks, kicked 4 goals in the first quarter. And, he really looked like he was going to steer Collingwood to a really comfortable win. But Adelaide, as you'd expect at Adelaide Oval, they fought back. And again, bad kicking's bad football. And Adelaide had a number of chances, in particular for someone who you'd expect to kick pretty straight in there, in Taylor Walker. He was off as well, and they just couldn't take their opportunities when they needed to. And every time they looked like they had a chance to get on top, Collingwood just come back with a quick response and pinch the game in the end. So huge win for Collingwood, and the Crows will be really disappointed.
What did you make of the game at Perth Stadium? This is at Optus Stadium. The what would have been Dreamtime at the G. They did a tremendous job in terms of selling the event. Tremendous crowd and pretty good game. And Essendon didn't let themselves down anywhere except on the scoreboard.
No, they didn't. I think the way that, firstly, if we're talking about the Dreamtime game in Perth as a whole, I think it was brilliantly set up. The entertainment, the bringing the Indigenous culture and getting everyone involved with that was really good. And, then it got to the game. Richmond got off to a really fast start and you thought, okay, here we go, Richmond, they're set for a pretty comfortable win here. But credit to their Essendon, they just stuck around. They didn't let Richmond get too far ahead, and and Essendon actually hit the lead in the last quarter. And you thought, with the wave of momentum they had, surely Essendon isn't going to pinch this game. And but in typical Richmond fashion, when the going gets tough, they just know that they can go to another level. And in 12 minutes of football, they win the game by 7 goals. Unbelievable stuff. And they're an unbelievable team, Richmond. They when the going gets tough, they in a heartbeat, you're out of the game. But Essendon won't be losing too many fans after that. They were really valiant, and you can see the signs there for them.
Well, we go from that game to the game against West Coast Eagles and Carlton. And I've got to say, I didn't know where to look. I thought Carlton had every chance to win it. And the one thing they couldn't do was nail it shut. And it gave the Eagles a fabulous win.
It did. And I think Carlton's biggest thing was they gave the Eagles a sniff. And when you give young teams a sniff, especially, we look at the Eagles, they still had a number of premiership stars out there, the likes of Natanui, Dom Sheed, Jamie Cripps, like Liam Ryan, so on and so forth. Liam Ryan was spectacular. He kicked 4 goals and, he was a massive contributor. But I think the key thing for the Blues was they allowed West Coast to sniff. And when you allow teams to sniff, they just push on even more. And Carlton, the Carlton did have chances, especially early on in the game. They did have chances to get a bit of a lead and they just couldn't put them in. And, every time Carlton kicked a goal, I think it was on average 49 seconds, West Coast come back with a goal or at least a score of some sort. 49 seconds. It's a very alarming stat. It's way too easy. And, the Blues will be disappointed and, obviously not winning a game like that, which they would have expected, and I think a lot would have expected that they should have won, has caused this external review to happen. They're sitting 4-8 at the moment, the Blues. They would have thought that they would be a lot better off than what they are right now, and changes have got to be made, and I think it's pretty evident.
Western Bulldogs up against the Dockers. It was a pretty good game.
It was a good game. Fremantle stuck around for a fair chunk of the game, but the Bulldogs. I think we just had that feeling with the Bulldogs. They just had that touch too much class. Bontempelli is a star. I think he's clear favourite for the Brownlow medal at the moment. He's playing some unbelievable football. He just kept willing that team, and in true Bulldogs fashion. Even when the game was close, few quick goals in a row, game's done. So the Bulldogs are the real deal as well this year.
Alex Caiafa, time for your AFL tips. Let's go quickly through them. It's the Cats back in action against Port Adelaide. Who gets the brownie points?
The Cats are supposed to get back some big stars, in particular, potentially, Patrick Dangerfield, Mitch Duncan, Cam Guthrie. That's a huge part of their midfield, and they're all going to be almost at full strength. I'm going to tip the roughie here, and the roughie is Geelong. I like the Cats here, especially if they get back to full strength.
All right, Swans and Hawks, quickly.
I like the Swans here at the SCG. I think, as we've said all along, Hawthorn, in a rebuilding phase, they're going through the next phase of bringing in the kids. And I think Sydney, especially at the SCG, are just looking too strong.
Dockers or the Suns?
This is another interesting game. The Dockers, as we've learned, Nat Fyfe won't be playing, and he could be set for shoulder surgery, which could put him out for a long while. And obviously, that's a huge loss for the Dockers. Gold Coast getting a nice little boost with their number 1 pick, Matt Rouse, set to come back this week after missing from round 1 with a knee injury. And I like the Suns here. I do. I know Fremantle are very strong at Optus Stadium, but I just think with Fyfe going down and Rao coming back for the Suns, I think they're going to be galvanised and they could get this done.
Okay. St Kilda, the team that's played up and down like a yo-yo all year, they're up against the Crows, who've also had that sort of year, up and down. Not sure which one's turning up.
Yeah, it's tough. We don't know which St Kilda is going to turn up, but there has been a report this week given Tim Membry and Seb Ross going back to Victoria for personal reasons. And there's been a report that St Kilda might not be able to fill out a full 26-man team this week, which is really interesting. So obviously you've got the 22, but then you have the 4 emergencies, and I don't think they're going to be able to field enough emergencies at the moment. That's what's coming out. So I think with that, you got to go the opposition.
Okay. What about Norths up against the Giants? Quickly, who gets through this?
Yeah, I think the Giants get done through this. I think they're looking good.
Eagles and Richmond.
Tough one, especially at Optus Stadium, and West Coast is supposed to be getting some stars back. Every time I tip against Richmond, they come out and play the game of their life. So I'm not making that mistake. I'll tip the reigning premiers.
All right, let's go now to the game that we started the conversation with. It'll be Bucks' last game. It's the Demons up against the Collingwood team that saw young Jamie come back and kick 6 goals.
Yeah, no, Jamie Elliott was a huge in for the Pies, and you could just see just his addition into the forward line. It just gave them
So who wins?
Gave them a new lease of life. He looked really good, but I think the way Melbourne are going at the moment, especially the way they are defensively, I think they're going to be a tough nut to crack, and Melbourne should get it done.
So there is the last bit of news. Nathan Buckley, what a way to go out, playing at the Sydney Cricket Ground, not the MCG. Last game in coaching the Collingwood team. Can he get the Pies up against what will be a pretty tough opponent? It's there for everyone to see now. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, George.